What's up, y'all? It's your boy Vinnie-Dangerous, and I'm back with another installment of Dangerous Minds, and I'm here to talk to y'all today about a topic that I wanted to get to a few weeks ago, but because of R. Kelly, because of the government shutdown, because of Chris Brown being arrested in Paris, just a bunch of crazy shit that has happened in the year 2019, and we're only about a month or so in. This particular topic was in jeopardy of being lost in the shuffle. It was a bunch of different things, a bunch of different topics that were just being thrown at me at once because of this crazy news cycle that we're hit with on a daily basis. And, you know, it was in jeopardy to just getting lost in the shuffle. But funny enough, luckily for me and for you, this topic reared its head again, and it allowed me, or inspired me, to create this episode that I'm titling When History Repeats Itself. Now, just recently, West Coast rapper Blueface was on The Breakfast Club, right? And they were asking about his label situation. And the concern that a lot of people felt from his response was that he didn't have a full understanding of what he really signed to. He said that he was the only thing he knew about was that he was signed to Cash Money West. And, you know, for people, when you really look at it, when you like look at the whole breakdown of how that like structure works, like Cash Money West is a imprint on the main Cash Money label that uses distribution with Republic, that also, all of that falls under Universal Music. So basically, this guy's pretty much signed to like 4 different labels and has no idea. He said that he read the contract, but if you would have read the contract, if you would have had a good understanding of what you were signing to, you would know that these other labels play a part in your career. And, you know, it's a situation where if you're not very, knowledgeable about what you're getting yourself into, we've seen the stories 100 times, which I'm about to get into. It could come back to haunt you. And an artist that, when this, topic really, originally resonated with me, that's also going through the latter part of that situation, like the part of it that we're afraid, people are afraid that Blueface is gonna end up facing because he doesn't know his label situation, is Lil Uzi Vert. A few weeks ago, Lil Uzi Vert was tweeting his frustrations, talking about he's quitting rap. When he was asked about it, it's because the label, or the people at the label, are like blocking him from being able to make music. He's not able to create music when he wants to, or put out music the way he wants to, like he used to when he was just a SoundCloud rapper, or he was just coming up before he signed that contract. So now he's feeling like trapped, he's feeling stuck, and he just doesn't want to do this no more. And a lot of people sympathize with that. A lot of people have like expressed their support for him, and that have shamed Atlantic Records, the label that he signed to. And Atlantic Records does have a history of doing shady business practices, especially with rappers. Not Lil Uzi Vert. Like, Lil Uzi Vert is going through that now, but we also got Lupe Fiasco, who just, years after signing with them, is just now getting to the point where he's able to kind of work, independently, put out the music that he's always wanted to create. At one point, they like shelved his Lasers album, where it took fan protests to push the label to finally put the album out. But because of label interference, it was regarded as like one of his worst projects from top, from top to bottom. Had some bright spots, like Words I Should Have Said or Never Said. I can't think of the title right now. And then you also have bad spots, like the song he did with Trey Songz, not Chris Brown, and other artists like Waka Flocka have also dealt with label issues with Atlantic. So they're not entirely innocent in this situation, but the idea, which is what really like resonated with me, the idea that an artist at this point, after decades of the same story that we hear all the time, we've heard about it in funk, we've heard about it in R&B, in blues, in rap, going on decades of artists signing shady deals, being held hostage by their label situation because they didn't have a full grasp of what they were signing and what they were getting themselves into with these labels, and you know, either end up broke, end up dying broke, end up, you know, being trapped on this label, and they're pretty much being held hostage to where they can't put out music anymore. Terrible scenarios that these artists are put in because of this ignorance of the music industry. But after decades and decades, when do we take, as artists, when do we take responsibility? When is it that we recognize what's going on with these labels? We recognize that these people are shady and they are purposely preying on young and, you know, naive. The naive, I guess, is the best word to use. Kids, especially, like, you know, people that come from like terrible backgrounds, they're broke, they're in like these violent environments. All they want to do is get out, and they see music as that opportunity to get out, and then they have the dream to just become this big star, like their heroes, like their idols, like the people that they grew up listening to. And they just see that contract, they see the label, they see all of that as their opportunity to become that megastar. But the ignorance in it at this point, especially after the stories. I mean, a few years ago, we had that very excellently produced, put together documentary about TLC and about the situation that they went through with their label situation. I mean, you know, we've seen it in the Temptations movie. We've heard about Prince, who literally had to change his name to a symbol, and he wrote the word slave when he performed because of his label holding him hostage for years. We've already heard about this stuff, and at some point, when do we as artists take responsibility? When do we get smartened up? I mean, and then you see it a lot now. Like, there's a lot of artists that have chosen to become independent. There's a lot of artists that say that they don't want to deal with these labels because of the restrictions and because of the terrible, underhanded practices that these labels have been doing because of the years and years of documented history of other artists succumbing to the same fate. And, you know, the irony that I feel, and the reason why Lil Uzi Vert's situation is so ironic and so a little funny to me, is because I remember when he was coming up, when his name was starting to like really catch like a buzz. And I remember the interview he did a few years ago, I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago, where he was on Hot 97. And he was talking about, well, it started where they asked him to freestyle over a beat, and they put on a DJ Premier beat. And he was just like, yo, you want me to rap over that? Like, you know, that's old shit. Like, get that out of here. Remember Lil Yachty around the same time was like, when he was asked about, you know, how people perceive him, and he just went on this whole tirade about, you know, how the old artists, like, nobody gives a fuck about them no more. Nobody gives a fuck about what came before us. Nobody, like, both of these guys are saying, like, fuck the past. You know, only thing that matters is what's going on now. So the irony of this situation is the fact that if you had, because the biggest thing about hip hop in general, and the fact that you consider yourself a hip hop artist, is what makes this very, like, what was very, like, you know, a touching thing for me. Like, I really hated it when I saw those guys say and do the things that they were doing, talking about the past. The big thing about hip hop is learning and paying homage to what came before you. It's a culture, and a culture without history isn't anything at all. So the fact that you're saying that you don't care about what came before you and disrespecting the artist and the history that came before you, the irony of it is The fact that if you paid attention to what came before you, paid attention to the history of hip hop and the history of hip hop and the music industry. If you just stopped at hip hop, I mean, the history of these labels doing shady shit goes back years. But if you would have just at least pay attention to the genre and the history of the genre that you're in, you would have known that this thing is a possibility. This thing is something that can happen. And the fact that you willfully ignored it, the fact that you willfully said that I don't really care about what happens before me, what happened before me didn't matter, is part of the reason why you're in this situation that you're in now. So any other artists that are coming up, and this is something personally, something that I have been affected by, something that is a danger to me in my career. And for as long as I decide to be in the music industry or any industry in general, you should always pay attention to anything you sign, anything that you put your name down, you put your signature on. You should be paying attention. You should have a full understanding of what's going on with this contract that's in front of you, and how much of your likeness that you're giving up, how much of your freedom that you would be giving up, and is the pros outweigh the cons, or is it just too much of a risk to take a chance with these labels and the shady business practices that have been well documented over years. This stuff is not new knowledge, but if you paid attention to the history lessons the OGs are trying to put on you, like Ebro, like other artists that took umbrage to what you were talking about, maybe Lil Uzi Vert, you wouldn't be in this state to where you would want to quit music. You wouldn't want to quit something you love because you didn't pay close enough attention to the dotted line. And that's my time. I mean, I'm gonna keep this episode short. That's really all I had to say. You know, real quick, I'm gonna just do a little bit of selling, I guess. You check this out. This is the shirt that I'm wearing. It's to promote the album Dream to Escape Hell, which is available on all streaming platforms: Apple Music, Spotify, Tidal, etc. You name it, it's on there. This shirt is going to be available at Vinnie-Dangerous.com. I'll leave a link to this in the description below. And while you're at it, you can also subscribe to the channel, follow me on all social medias, at Dangerous Minds. YouTube is on Facebook and on Instagram, as well as my own personal socials. Everything is at Vinnie-Dangerous, and there I'm on every platform from Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, you name it, I'm there. But that's my time. Make sure that you pay close attention to your history, or history wouldn't have to repeat itself. I've once again been Vinnie-Dangerous. This is Dangerous Minds, and until next time, peace.